So what I wanted to talk about was, which disciple are you? Every man sits at the table, but not every man surrenders at it. Um, it says in Luke 22:27, for who is greater, the one at the table or the one serving? Isn't it the one at the table? But I am among you as the one who serves. What I wanted to talk about, and we're sitting at a tables, right? We're all sitting at tables. And it's okay to be able to identify who you are, and that's what I wanted to do. I don't know that I've ever really broke down or even looked at the disciples down as like individuals. They're always cupped together, you know? What I want us to do as men, what I must do as a man, is understand that in every environment that we're in, people are different. In every environment that we're work in, people are different. When you and y'all all are this way, we all have we're all really good at observing, and a lot of you are really good at discerning and identifying. Right. One thing that's helped me a lot is being in rooms and not being the center of the room, but evaluating the room and the people in the room so I can communicate better, but also that I can understand who individuals are. And this is at work, this is really all scenarios. And what it does is it allows me to maneuver better, but also like learn people more or grow more as a person. And if you coach a ball team, you may coach a ball team like if baseball team, let's say baseball season right now. And if you've ever coached like younger kids, right? If you have a kid, and I have had that, that is extremely ADHD, which by the way, now every kid's diagnosed with that because maybe they all are. I don't know, right? But if you coach one, like it is absolutely crazy to try to get a bunch of kids together because they're just all over the place. One kid's out there chasing a butterfly. Like you will never see a butterfly on a baseball field until you get to a t-ball game. And then it's like, where did the butterfly come from? And a kid will find it, and then he's out there, and or they're in their own little game. They're out there, and they got a glove, no ball, and they're out there acting like they're throwing it, and they're facing the opposite side of the field. It's like, what is that kid doing? It's like, well, I don't know. It's my kid. I don't know, right? When they run the opposite way, they hit a ball and they run to third, and you're like, that's mom's genes right there, So you go through that, but like if you were doing that though as coach, even as young kids though, when you're like have kids, you kind of know, all right, that kid needs to be in the outfield because the ball gets hit here all the time, and the kid's going to get hit, right? When you in work, if you're over people, you have to understand traits of people, temperaments of people, where they thrive, where they do great, right? Some people do not need to be customer facing. They're great people, but they don't need to be talking to customers because either they have diarrhea of the mouth, right? Or they have a short fuse or something. And you're like, you got to manage that though, because you got to say like that person's a great employee. He's just in the wrong, he don't need to be there. Right? I've always been there. I'm like, well, that's why I just hired you because you obviously needed a job. Right? It didn't work out. Right? When we go through this, even with like family, you have to understand family. I have to understand family. There's scenarios, Ovi, where I'm around certain family members, I don't talk. Because probably what I'm going to say is not going to be received well. Because some, and y'all may not have these. Y'all may all have perfect scenarios. Some situations I'm just triggered. So they could say something, and really, it could just hit me different than it hit the next person. So sometimes I just don't talk as much, and sometimes when I'm with certain family members, I am so open. I can have such a deep conversation. Like my uncle, he was talking about there, at the holidays, I have the most conversations with him. But years ago, I mean, we barely said hi ever when we were around each other. But see, there's a different commonality now, it seems like, because he's curious, and we've talked about Fight Club, and because they don't have anything like this, all that, So it's like different scenarios. So the reason why I'm sharing all this is like, I love, I love so much, and I think it's biblical that there's so much value in the diversity, the different ages, the different challenges, the different triumphs, the different demographic, financials. I love it when you get all the different layers and different personalities and different lives into a room or into a scenario, but they all are on the same page with Christ. I think there's so much you can pull from that. If I only hung out with people like me, I would never learn anything. If I only hung out with people my age, I would never learn anything. If I hung out, but having that diversity, and that's why I love Fight Club, honestly, is because there's been scenarios where there's been somebody sitting at a table worth hundreds of millions of dollars at the same table with somebody that's just got out of prison, that don't have two sticks to rub together. I think that's beautiful. And I think God looks at that and he's like, yes, yes. Because God doesn't see the differences there, I don't think. I think he just sees the person. And I love that, and I say this in encouragement, guys, because like when we talk about the disciples, these are men that in my thought process is that they were recruited. To me, and I could be wrong, but to me it would be the same as if Jesus went and he just walked, as he did then, and he chose random people and he brought them into his fold. Meaning he didn't go to the Sanhedrin Council back then. He didn't go to the temple and he goes, give me your 12 best, right? Give me the ones that's never missed a week of temple. I don't even know what they did all back then. Y'all are so much smarter than me, so some of y'all might be cringing right now. But you know what I'm saying? He didn't go and say, well, show me the ones that's given the most money. I'll tell you what, give me 3 of the most money, 3 that's always taught something, 3 that's always been on a leadership board of some kind through the church, and somebody that's never misses a week of X, right? That would make sense to the commonalities because, like when I refer back to baseball, like they used to annoy me so much when the kids were young because Carter was underdeveloped. He was just a scrawny, he was built like Lindsey, just a little bitty scrawny thing. He didn't get tall. He didn't become where I could see where he could actually be an athlete until he was like in high school. And then he shot up in height. I was like, oh, okay, well, there you are. He was born, I don't say premature, but he was born early. He was small. And like I said, he was born as a ginger, but he was really blonde. But then I was like, this kid's small and a ginger? I'm joking. My brother's a ginger, so I'm allowed to do that. Oh, but I'm just saying, like, when these kids were young, though, when they were building an all-star team, and y'all may be in this world right now, maybe it's so frustrating because whoever's the most dominant dad that literally lives at the ballpark, he builds a team, and if you're not in on it, then your kid just don't make it. He could be more athletic, but it don't really matter. It's politics. It's just small-town politics. Travel ball's not much different, but you got to be good to play on certain teams, and certain things. I mean, it's a totally different thing. But, like, it would make sense that if Jesus had this limited time, he knew that he would go get the people that were already like spoke his language. Because if we talked about before, the Pharisees, all these people, like they projected themselves as like fasting and temple and all, like they checked all the boxes religiously. But it's ironic that Jesus walks and grabs fishermen and what I think is blue collar, just guys. So what I do definitely believe is, and he was okay If Jesus would have went to the temple and got somebody, if he went and he said, you know what, I'm going to get Cody because there's you vouch for Cody. Yeah, Cody's this, right? And he's like, all right, I'm going to recruit Cody because everybody says his life's perfect. Everything's perfect. His kids are great. They don't get on technology. They've never said a cuss word. The teacher says they're prime students, right? His relationship is everything is perfect. His job's perfect. He's overpaying his tithes and offering. Like he checks every box, right? Because that's what he tells us, and that's what we see. Right? Well, yeah, Cody, come on, man. You're 1 of 12. Let's go get 11 more, right? I feel like when Jesus saw these men for not who they were, or really not who they are, but who through him they could be. I think when God looks at you and looks at me, he doesn't so much look at who we were or even who we are right now. He looks at who we could be through him. There is so much excitement through that. Because if you serve a God that is great as you say he is, then you have to have the belief that what you're capable of doing far exceeds what your mind can tell you you could be. I like to speak to guys in affirmation because I've seen it with you. I've seen it with myself that God can take us to a place that we've never thought we deserved or we could reach. A place maybe I've tried 20 years to get to. And I'm like, screw this. There ain't no way I'm going to, X, right? And it's funny because then when I do relax that, when you do relax that, that's actually when God's going to come into work. He's like, all right, are you done? It's been 40 years, bro. Like marriage, or something, right? You fought through all that, or maybe you've had a divorce, right? And you're like, I just can't find anybody. I've not been in that scenario. I cannot speak to that. But at some point, you may say, I've prayed about it, prayed about it, and prayed about it. I understand that too. I get it. But God may not be asking for any of those things. He may just be wanting you to try to get your hands off the wheel for a minute and let him drive. In a scenario, job or relationship, I talk to her all the time. We talk about it and we do, yeah. But that's your opinion and your scenario. What would a therapist say if they watched y'all's conversation? They may say, you won't shut up. Or they may say, well, you're checking out. Or, what I'm saying? Or they may say, hey, she's not even acknowledging you're talking. Well, we talk every. You see what I'm saying? There's all these different things here. So I challenge you to think about this. So when we think about this, guys, when you think about which disciple are you? I just think this is a fun exercise. It's totally different. It's something new. But it's okay to not be okay. I'm so turned off when I talk to a guy or anybody, really. It can be non-religious, non-church related or anything. But somebody that's always great, that's always perfect, that everything's perfect, and they're a perfect Christian, and they let me know how much they do. I'm like, are we comparing here? Because I didn't even mention what I do, but you gonna go here and start dropping dimes down like you're just some. Okay, well tonight when I pray to God, I'm gonna tell him, hey, would you make sure you tell Cody how awesome he is? If you've never spoke to Cody tomorrow, would you please, when he says he's praying to you 20,000 times a day, I don't know how the guy's got a job, but evidently he's managing it, But when he has time, God, would you tell him how incredible he is? Because he's wanting somebody to give him credit. You see? But I've been in that scenario where I felt that way, and what I realized is that I wasn't, in my world, I was like, all this, but in reality, it wasn't received by anybody in that way. There was no humbleness, no obedience, no any of those things. So I had to look at a chart similar to this, and I got Bartholomew here. It's like an authentic man, right? And then you go down to Matthew, redeemed man. Philip, analytical man. All these many things, like where do I fall into play? And am I okay with admitting that there's some things that I could be better at? Because until you walk through the gates of heaven, you always have something that you need to work on. You just do. Let's say you get through a job or a divorce or a, whatever. You always need to be okay with saying, what could I be better, or how could I be better? It's okay. I think the Bible constantly reminds us of that. Men, we have to be okay with doing that. And when we look through this here, that's what I want y'all to do is through your table, I would love for you to kind of break through that and be okay with being like, wonder who I kind of lean towards. And there's scriptures here, descriptions, what to watch out for, and some challenges that personality might have. There's a lot. There's so much self-awareness with me. And y'all know some of y'all pick up on some of it, right? My wife picks up on everything. But I was having a talk with John earlier today. Like, there's so many things that I've had to be like super self-aware about. Because of the way, like in scenarios, I come off or I may not come off, or, it's just all these different things that I have to constantly evaluate myself on. And what we want to do is we want to glorify God. And that's what, as we're coming to Easter, as we're coming into just a couple weeks away, I wanted to start kind of preparing that up. And I really want to take the next couple weeks to go through this process, this remembrance of, but maybe in a different angle than what we're going to normally get from preaching in church and what we normally do. So I think it's super important to evaluate like the men at that table, who was all there. Even Judas, even Judas is at this table, and we all know he's. Well, it's easy to say it after somebody's been exposed. It's like you could be good friends with somebody. We've been in couples, where we used to go out with friends and do all this stuff, and I always thought they were good, and then like you find out one of them's had an affair for 5 years, right? But then after they have the affair, right, they get divorced in the hands, and then what do you say? Like, I knew, I had a feeling. I'm like, it's so stupid, right? But it exposed itself, so I'm just going to go. Same way with kind of Judas, right? So I think. Not Judas was the one, we know that, but I think a couple other men, had they turned, we'd be talking about them too. Well, I knew it. Matthew, he was a tax collector. Or Philip, he was a doubter. Like, I could see him, like he doubted God. So it makes sense that he would have traded some silver for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, so just open our eyes up and open our minds up to thinking a little bit different, right? Because I could have been characterized, or may have been characterized as a Judas at one time. Thank God we live for a God that's truly forgiving of whatever, right? But I may have been characterized as that. But I do think that I would be one that maybe Jesus would consider putting on the team. Because I'm not perfect, but I'm willing. And so my challenge to you is, would you be one of the guys? Are you more concerned about being more in the temple? More of everybody else recognizing you rather than what God really wants to see? Or are you just completely distant, don't care about either one of them? What do you look for when these guys gather at this table, when you gather at your table? Like, what do you truly look for to receive from your hour-ish when you're here in the morning? Is it just to come in and dump a bunch of stuff on a bunch of guys to get it off your chest? It's okay, but just don't do it every week, right? Because there's other people at that table that you maybe you could grow more by not doing that, for once, and just listening. Because there may be somebody there that really needs, that's never shared or never opened up, said, man, I connect with this doubting part. I have trouble with it. You may have an opportunity to share some of that great experience you got. And I think that's where we all become super strong. I think that's the uniqueness of Fight Club. And I think that's a strength that you men have, and that we need to challenge other men to have, is that God doesn't pick perfect people, or we would all be condemned. It would rain and it wouldn't stop. I mean, Lord, it starts raining after a couple of days, and everything shuts down around this place, right? School's shutting down 100%, right? But we don't serve a God like that. We serve a God that says, hey, you're that guy. You have this happened. You want forgiveness? I'll forgive you. We won't talk about it again. Down the road, I want you to talk about it again if, in fact, it helps another man. If, in fact, it helps the kingdom. Bring it back up. But we ain't going to live there no more. That's past. Marriage didn't work out. I understand, because you weren't a follower, nor was she. Not really. Not really. So let's keep that where it's at. Let's learn from it. And let's start projecting the love of Christ through our actions instead of what we believe we should be doing. Let's step away from ourselves and let God step in. Right? And that's what, if you will, like I said, I want more time because I really would love for y'all to kind of walk through this. Try to let everybody kind of talk and think about it. Maybe read some of the scripture tied to those. Maybe put some notes there. But process some of those. Look through those disciples and see like which one kind of connects to you. Which one, are you a quiet faithful like they're on John? Andrew, are you a connector? Do you bring others to Jesus? You know, who are you there? Who would you like to be? I wasn't giving no offense to anybody. I don't hold accountable, but I wasn't like, I don't have a grandfather and a father and a brother where I have all these like pristine examples where I'm like, if I could just mirror that, right? And honestly, if you have that, you're actually a minority. You're not a majority. If you have that, if you were given that, praise God. Because majority are not. So like Alex said, if we didn't have that, where do we get it from? You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't have that to learn by, Sandy, where do you gain it? You either just deal with it and say, it's who I am, like it or not. Okay. Right? Or you have to dive into the Father, our Father, which art in heaven, and you have to allow God's word to speak to you so you can be developed into the man that He desires you to be and designs you to be and your destiny to be. And I think if you think in that mindset, it's just like, okay, all right, let's go. Let's go. So, if you will, talk through this. I think it's a great thing. And I put it, this isn't something harsh. This isn't something else. It's really just understanding who the disciples were and how is that relatable to us. As we go into the resurrection, the crucifixion, as we go into those weeks there, want to understand like the guys that were around God, around Jesus, okay? And I want to understand how that's relatable to us and how we can apply that. And if you'll do the breakout questions, but like I said, go through those, talk about some of those people through there, put some notes down if you're unfamiliar with them, and you ain't gonna know all of them. I don't know all of them to any degree, right? So do that, and then see through that, like which disciple are you, which one connects to you, and see what God opens up. Yeah.
Question. So these are the 12.
Uh-huh.
There's others out there that are disciples as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because some of these may not fit for guys and others may fit.
Yeah.
So
I think it's okay to be open to talk through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's be open to talk through it. The main thing is kind of understanding, who was there. These disciples were there, but then others too. If you kind of do that, I think it's okay. Like I relate myself to Paul a lot in some ways, and it was really, and that's pretty humble, I think, to say that, because I'm not talking about Paul on the back end. I'm talking about, what I'm saying. I'm not talking about trophy Paul. I'm talking about Paul on the other part, right? And I'm talking about Paul on his first, say, 5 years of his ministry, and 3 he wasn't even talked about, right? So that's what helped me get to where I am today, honestly, because I've just related myself to a lot of his scenarios. Like the first, I didn't do any groups, I didn't do any social, I didn't do anything. I didn't start Fight Club till like 3 years after I had quit drinking, and honestly, that mirrored Paul. That's where I got it from, because I thought, well, I'm not mentally capable. I'm not mature enough. I'm going to speak not like it's not going to have a, so literally I was off social media for 5 years, And the only reason I got back on it was because I was like, I don't have any friends, and if I'm going to do something, maybe it's a way to get people, you know, which it wasn't. It was by word of mouth, right? But I'm just saying, like, Paul was very similar to me. But I'm going to, as I grow and mature in Christ, I'm going to levitate towards probably others in the Bible that I can look at, and so forth. So I guess that's what I'm kind of sharing with you, is to kind of think like in that mindset, right? And that way, when you go through Easter and you go through talking about Peter, and you're like, I get it, man, that dude was just hardcore. He was just very spastic, and you know, whatever. Like, you'll understand. I think the Easter, I think you'll appreciate it more, as I have, as we go through the next couple of weeks. You understand who was around him as he went forward. So, all right. If you have any questions, let me know. But yeah, if you will, go through that, pray over it, talk through it, and hopefully you'll receive what I have. Cool. Thank you, guys.